Hello, it's me again, and we're going to start by going over the first chapter of the semester. So, a brief introduction over what anatomy and physiology is. And what I have here is structure determines function. So, structure or form is, yes, you guessed it, anatomy. It's what you see, what you can feel. And function is physiology. Okay. I have a list here of different things going all the way down to 10 organisms. And organisms is humans. Okay. In humans. In structure, remember, structure determines function, the ultimate function. So what type of organism it is its function. What type of function it's going to carry out. What the human is going to do. If it's a big human, it might do something like lift heavy weights or be a football player. Okay, so let's go back up to the top. What are subatomic particles? So some of you have had chemistry, some of you have not, and that's fine. So subatomic particles are protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now, electrons carry a negative charge, and they're going to work together to form bonds between atoms. Some examples of atoms are chlorine, which has a negative charge, sodium, which has a positive charge, calcium, which actually has a positive 2 charge, and what's another one? Hydrogen. Hydrogen has a positive charge, and these are actually called ions. Okay? And when these atoms come together and share these electrons, they form molecules. And some important molecules in human physiology are water, H2O, oxygen, O2. But wait a minute, wouldn't that just be an atom? No, look, we have 2 oxygens together. And when those 2 atoms come together, those 2 oxygen atoms come together, they form a molecule. Another important one in human physiology is CO2. We know this to be carbon dioxide. Both of those, oxygen and CO2, are important in breathing. So what are biomolecules? As you notice, we're getting bigger as we go down this list. What are biomolecules? Well, biomolecules are actually just bigger molecules. We take these molecules, put them together along with other atoms, and form bigger molecules. And we put these biomolecules in certain categories, and you already know these, whether you realize it or not. And these are carbs, sugars, and other ones are lipids. These are our fats, proteins, and nucleic acids. Nucleic acids. These are our DNA and our RNA, the building blocks of life. Okay. And we can take these biomolecules, put those together, and form organelles. Some examples of these organelles would be like mitochondria. I'm going to abbreviate this. What's another one? Ribosomes. Maybe a Golgi apparatus, and there are other ones, just put etc. We can take these organelles, put them all together, and form cells. And a cell is really the first place we actually see life. So I'm going to put the word life here to remind you that a cell is the first place that we actually see life. Okay, it's a living. A cell is life. So we can take a bunch of these cells, put them together, and form tissues. So what's the definition of a tissue? Well, a tissue is cells, but to be specific, cells of different kinds. Different kinds of cells that work together towards a common function. Okay, and that's the theme the rest of the way down. Okay, so we can take a bunch of these tissues, put them together, and form organs. So organs are a bunch of tissues, different kinds, that work together towards a common function. Okay, so then again, organs, different kinds of organs, that work together towards a common function are organ systems. So it's an example of an organ system. We'll talk about this later on. Maybe a heart along with blood vessels that work together form the circulatory system, or the lungs along with, say, the trachea work together to form the respiratory system. And when all these things come together, they form an organism. And our example of an organism was a human. Okay? So that's our first theme. So remember that structure determines function. And all of our themes here formed a human. And whether that human's function was to become a football player or, say, a doctor, who knows? Okay. So what's our second theme? Our second theme is homeostasis. And we'll see this theme throughout the semester. So please really try to learn what homeostasis is. Okay. We'll start out with a definition because this is really important. Homeostasis is the maintenance of relatively constant internal environment. So, what is the internal environment? Okay, so if you've had intro, you might already know this. So, if we had a cell, so here's our cell with the nucleus, this space outside the cell is the extracellular fluid. Okay? But it's also within the organism itself, is it not? Okay. That's still the internal environment. So don't get that confused. We call this space the extracellular fluid. It's not within the cell, but it's outside the cell. Okay, that's the extracellular fluid. And this is the big ticket right here, the extracellular fluid. Okay, so homeostasis is the maintenance of relatively constant internal environment. And when I say internal environment, I'm talking about within the organism itself. Okay? And how it maintains that is by certain variables within the extracellular fluid. Okay? So I have 3 rectangles down here. I'm going to write the word human body right here. Okay? So the human body is made up of, we'll do it in blue, about 60% fluid. Okay? 60% fluid. And that 60% fluid is what we know to be the internal environment. If you're confused, don't worry. I'm going to break this down. So this is the internal environment. So the human body is made up of about 60% fluid. That means we have about 40% left over. So what else is there? If 60% is fluid, what is left over? That could be your bones, other solid material, anything that is not fluid. So what we're concerned with is this internal environment, this fluid, this 60% here. So let's break this down even more. Okay? Let's talk about that 60% right there. Let's talk about just that fluid. Okay? Let's draw a plasma membrane. If you've taken intro, you already know what a plasma membrane is. Okay? I'm going to draw some hydrophobic heads. If something is hydrophobic, it means it hates water. And then I'll draw some hydrophilic tails. If it's hydrophilic, that means it loves water. Where do we find plasma membranes? Well, around the cell, right? Right in there. Okay, the cell membrane is a plasma membrane. What I've drawn here is a plasma membrane. It separates the extracellular fluid from the intercellular fluid. Not the internal environment, but the intracellular fluid. Okay? So when you think internal environment, I want you to think fluid. Okay? So outside here is going to be the extracellular fluid. The extracellular fluid. What's outside the cell? Okay? This will be inside the fluid, and it's going to be the intercellular fluid. The intracellular fluid. What's inside the cell? Okay. The intercellular fluid is about 66%. Okay, so inside is about 34%. I'm not sure if that's what your book says, but that's about what I know. That's about the roundabout number. Okay. The intercellular fluid is also known as the cytoplasm. Okay, the cytoplasm. All right. The extracellular fluid, or the ECF, is outside of the cell. Okay. Intercellular fluid is within the cell. All right. Let's break this down even more and talk about just the ECF, because homeostasis is going to function by regulating those variables within the ECF. Okay, so let's talk about that 34%. 34% right there. The extracellular fluid. Still with me? So if we break apart this extracellular fluid, we want to talk about what it's made up of. We'll draw a little red line here. And we have the blood plasma. And that makes up about 25%. The other 75% is called interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid. Okay, it's the fluid between the cells. So that's the fluid between the cells. Okay, the fluid between the cells. So why am I telling you all of this? Because it's going to become important when we think about how homeostasis is maintained and where it's maintained. Okay, so remember the big ticket item here is the extracellular fluid that's contained within the internal environment. the fluid of the body. Okay, that was our second theme. All right. Our next theme is communication. We're going to talk about organ systems. So, we generally know what organ systems are. For example, the cardiovascular system. When we say cardiovascular system, we think of the heart. Cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is actually all about circulating extracellular fluid. So look, I've already brought in that second theme we just talked about. So the cardiovascular system is all about circulating extracellular fluid. What's extracellular fluid made up of? Go back and look at that last page if you've taken notes. It's made up of what? Blood plasma and interstitial fluid. Okay. All right, so our organ systems. I've listed here organ systems that play a role in. Okay, and what I want to talk about is keeping in mind homeostasis. Okay, so organ systems, our first one is going to be organ systems that play a role in maintaining metabolism. So maintaining metabolism. Okay. So what would be our first one that comes to mind? Well, we need to eat to maintain metabolism, so our digestive system. The second one would be respiratory. And then lo and behold, our muscular skeletal system. Okay. All of those come into play when maintaining metabolism. What about an organ system that plays a role in waste removal? Waste removal. Again, digestive system. That one should have been easy. The respiratory system. We have to have oxygen. The third one, the urinary system. We can see how all of these organ systems are working together. If my dog barks, I apologize. The car just pulled up. Okay, another organ system. An organ system that plays a role in coordinating and communication. So an integrator. So we'll write an organ system that plays a role in integration. Integration. And remember, integration is coordinating and communication. What's the first one that comes to mind here? The nervous system. The nervous system. The second one should be the endocrine system. The endocrine system is one that produces all our hormones and also plays a role in many other things in our body. So an organ system that plays a role in protection. Protection. What about immunity? So that would be lymphatics, our lymph system. We'll write lymphatics and immune system. Okay. Those two go hand in hand. The second one, we'll write, what about our skin? Yeah, also skin or integumentary system. Okay. And then the last one is the organ system that plays a role in, we'll call it procreation. Procreation. Okay. It's not really much in the way of homeostatic control, but I still want to include this in communication. And of course, this is our reproductive system. Our reproductive system. Okay. So this is how our organ systems communicate to help control homeostasis. Okay. So that's our third theme. Let's keep moving. All right, our fourth theme. This is a continuation of homeostatic systems, and I can't stress enough of grasping these concepts because they will be continued on throughout the entire semester, even on into A&P2. Okay, so our fourth theme. Homeostatic systems have a regulated variable, and where is this maintained? Do you remember? The ECF, or the extracellular fluid. Remember, this is where it's maintained. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this system here. Our regulated variables. How do we check these regulated variables? Through sensors. So regulated variables, or a change, so this little delta or triangle symbol, I will often draw this instead of writing the word change. Okay, so a change in a regulated variable is detected by sensors. So we have lots of these sensors in our body that detect changes in these regulated variables. Okay, so that's our first step in maintaining these homeostatic systems. So what happens when a change is detected? Okay, we'll draw a cell here. There's our little cell, so a little nucleus cell. And these cells have little receptors on them. Okay. The next step is to generate a signal. All right. So that sensor on that cell, or receptor on that cell, will cause something within the cell, and it will generate a signal. Okay. Often, that sensor will generate this signal, and it will be received as an error message, like something is wrong. Something is wrong with that variable. Okay, we'll talk more about that. Where is this signal going? We'll do this in yellow. Well, it's going to a control center. This is the integrator. Where did we learn the integrators are located? One of the big integrators of the body, organ systems was, the nervous system. Okay, so that signal is going to be received in the control center, like the nervous system. And that's step 3. It says, hey, we're not at our set point. So we got to fix this. All right. It sends out another message, an output message. Okay. To an effector target. to an effector target. All right. So what's it going to do then? What's our number 5 step? Well, it's got to cause something. It's going to do something. It's going to cause some sort of action. Okay. And it's going to travel back to that regulated variable and either cause a change in it or cut off that negative feedback loop. So we'll learn later on what a negative feedback loop is. Okay, I'll write that out here. Negative feedback loop. Okay, so if it causes a change in that regulated variable, like it causes it to go back down to that set point where it's supposed to be, then it's a negative feedback loop. Okay? If it doesn't, then that would be a positive feedback loop. If it keeps going up or it keeps going back down, that would be a positive feedback loop. Don't worry, we're going to go back over this many a times. Okay? So this is how homeostatic systems are regulated. It gets detected on a cell and it generates a signal. It goes to the control center. It says, hey, this is not at the set point. It goes out. It sends an output message to an effector target, and then it causes some sort of action. Okay. So what kinds of themes are regulated variables? So what are some examples of regulated variables? Some examples would be pH. So pH, like acids and bases in the body. If something is too acidic in the body, like blood pH, if our blood is too acidic or too basic. Glucose, so blood sugar. Body temperature. So body temperature. Okay. Is another good one. All right, so that's it for the 4th theme. The last theme I want to talk about is a cellular mechanism. Okay. So what's a cellular mechanism? Or physiological, that's a long word. Physiological mechanism that answers how. Okay, so let me say that again. So a cellular mechanism or physiological mechanism that answers how. Okay. For example, let me ask you, how does that muscle contract? So how do we make a muscle contract? Or how does thyroid hormone, get produced? So I'm not asking you to be super specific because we haven't gone over all of these things, but notice here I have star. I have a star. Let's go back at that list or that chart. So where at this circular chart here of regulated variables and systems do we think we could have a cellular mechanism happening that could answer, say, how does a muscle contract or how is thyroid hormone produced? Well, we have cellular mechanisms happening all over the place. Well, we could have a cellular mechanism happening here. A cellular component could be generating that signal. We could have one happening here at the integrator system in the nervous system, receiving that signal from that cell that detected the change in the regulated variable. We could have a cellular mechanism here that receive the output message at the effector target. We could have a cellular mechanism happening here at step 5, causing the action, doing something, continuing the negative feedback loop, or stopping it. Okay? So we could have cellular mechanisms throughout this entire system, um, maintaining homeostasis. Okay? So that was it for the 5th theme and the conclusion of this lecture. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to email me, and I can't wait to meet all of you on Thursday. Thank you.